With me today is Peter Baines, OAM, and he is the founder of charity Hands Across the Water, which he established to support children left without parents or family after the tsunami in Thailand. Before that, Peter was part of the elite forensic services group within the New South Wales Police Force for 22 years, where he was deployed to Bali after the bombings and Thailand after the tsunami, leading international disaster teams in the identification of those who died. And Peter has now released a new book, Leadership Matters, and that's what we will be discussing today. So welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Julie. It's great to be with you.
Awesome. So, really keen to dive into this today. So, firstly, can you share one of the most pivotal leadership lessons that has stayed with you and shaped who you are as a leader now?
Yeah, I think one of the real clear defining moments about the importance of leadership was, as organisations, and certainly was what we did within the emergency services and the police, was you prepare for events and you run simulation scenario training, and you build up capacity for what might come. And I think in building those programs, scenario and simulation training, they have to be reasonably foreseeable, because if they're not foreseeable, then you lose the engagement of those that you're working with. And so the training that we used to do, it was measured. Our measure was in the number of people who died from incidents. That was just the nature of the work that I did. And so we would look at preparing simulation and scenario training for up to the hundreds of fatalities. So to walk into a temple in Thailand where there was 3,500 decomposing bodies on the ground in one place, that for me was a real defining moment around the
Mm.
importance of leadership, because it was so much beyond anything that we'd prepared or trained for. And there was no procedures, there was no rules, there was no handbook, and it really came down to leadership and the importance of leaders making decisions. And I think when I look back, it was that moment that where I said leadership really does matter.
Yeah, which is, of course, the title of your book. So, I just can't imagine being confronted with something like that. And as you said, like training, all your preparation just really couldn't prepare anyone for that. So how, like, was there anything that you did to, I suppose, dig deep into your resilience to help you get through that? And because my mind goes everywhere, and it's like, how did you protect your mental health in a situation like that?
Yeah, I think there's a number of key things from a leadership point of view that the Australians did and the leaders did, and to and the first is that you've got to act with speed. And when there's opportunities that exist to make a difference, no matter what field you're in. If we talk about business, if you wait until you have all of the answers to all of the questions, if you wait for certainty, then you'll miss the opportunity. You'll miss that gap in the marketplace, and someone will move before you. So I think it's about having the courage to move and make difficult decisions. I think it's about the importance of
Mm.
presence of leaders, and we can reflect on a crisis that occurred on a home front, and we look at our leaders on a state basis and a national basis through the pandemic, and those, whether we agreed with them or not, the fact that they were present. We can look at our leaders both nationally and on a state level through the 2019 and 2020 bushfires. And I'm from New South Wales, and our Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, was an outstanding leader because she was
Mm.
present. It wasn't her job to to lead the response. It wasn't her job to coordinate the fire agencies or to be on the ground, but she was present. And that's what we want from
Mm,
our leaders. And then we compare that to our federal leader at the time, Scott Morrison, who decided it was an appropriate time to head to Hawaii for a holiday. And, what that said about him as a leader, how he dealt with that, how he responded to that. And, I think he was unelectable after his actions there. And so I think they're the important things of leading, not through crisis and disaster solely, but leading
mm,
through times where there's opportunity, where there's challenge. It could even be unprecedented growth that we're faced with, that we need strong leadership. And then the second part of your question was around, well, how do you protect yourself? And I think it comes to that point of, on an organisational level and on a personal level, of having a real clarity of purpose around why you do what you do. Because if you're really clear when you're presented with challenges, either on a business level or on a personal level, it's easier to make those informed decisions. And for me, it was I was there to provide answers to families, and those
mm,
answers was identifying their loved ones and returning them home. And Julie, like all of us who worked in that environment, had spent our careers working in the forensic area, and
mm,
for my work for 20 years, if I wasn't investigating or exposed to or involved in some way death on a weekly basis, it was an unusual week. So to turn up into Thailand, what we were confronted with was just something much bigger than we'd ever been exposed to before. But on
mm,
some level, those of us were responding had experience in that area.
mm. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it takes a special person, I think, to do that. So tell us a little bit about your book, Leadership Matters. And, I don't know if you can sort of condense it down into a bit of a nutshell about what it's about and how it will help leaders.
Yeah, so it's my third book, and I guess the reason I wrote it was I was presenting at conferences about 12 months ago. This time, 12 months ago, after having come out of the pandemic, and I just saw how the stories that I was sharing around resilience, around courage, around taking on risk rather than trying to avoid it, around the strength of leadership. I saw how that was resonating with the audiences. I saw their response to what I was presenting. I heard from the leaders of business that I was working with who were saying those key messages were so important and so timely. And so I decided that I felt that that was a good reason and good time to write the book. And the book Leadership Matters. It's filled with stories and insights for leaders, achievers, and visionaries. And it has the observations from some of the crisis and disaster days when I worked in, because it wasn't just Japan, Thailand and Bali. I worked in Japan and Saudi Arabia. I worked for Interpol, leading an international counterterrorism project. I worked for the UN Office of Drug and Crime in a capacity building through Southeast Asia. And so I bring some of those insights into the book. And then it's also, as you mentioned in the intro, the last 20 years I've been involved in leading the charity that I started after the tsunami. And there's some incredibly remarkable people that I've worked with in that time. And, I've taken some of the lessons and that I've learned personally from working with them and shared them in the book as well.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think I'm not surprised that people are resonating with your messages. And I think from what I'm seeing, a key component in your book is about resilience. And
Mm,
that seems to be something that is a really hot topic now for leaders. And I am speaking very generally here, but it seems to be something that appears to be lacking in people. Um, you know, People speak. very specifically about the younger generation in that respect. So, what do you think is key in terms of building resilience? And is it something that someone just has, or is it something that people can build? I'm really keen on your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think it's closely related to another topic in the book, where I talk about the desire of parents raising kids, the desire of organisations, of community groups, of government, is to look at how we can avoid risk, how we can protect ourselves, and the thing is, though, when we don't learn to manage and take on risk, then when we're presented with it, we don't have that skill. We don't have that muscle memory. We don't know how to deal with risk, and I think resilience comes from facing challenges and dealing with challenges. And it's I think we become so risk adverse is that
Mm,
we deprive our kids, we deprive those in organisations of growing, because we grow through learning. And
yeah.
when we say, oh well, don't do that, let's not do this might happen. Well, then how do we know? How do we? Where do our innovators and our creators and our artists and our pioneers come from if we say don't take on risk?
Yeah.
It's a true leadership is around facing challenges and setting directions that haven't been faced or haven't been travelled before.
Mm,
Otherwise, if we're following policy and procedure in a set direction, well, that's management.
mm,
Leadership is about having the courage to be okay with making decisions and getting them wrong, and
yes.
taking on risk and getting it wrong. I think as a society, as organisations, we forgive leaders who have the courage to make difficult decisions and get it wrong, as long as they own it. I think, and I saw this in Bali, where we had to send one of our most senior police officers home because he
Mm,
was so fearful of making the wrong decision. He didn't make any decision.
right.
And
Yeah.
we would have been better if he made a decision and got it wrong. But your question around resilience, and you're right, it is spoken about a lot, and I speak about it and I reflect upon it a fair bit in the book. And I draw
Mm,
upon a woman that fundamentally changed my life and who I met in 2010. And this woman by the name of May Phil was running a home for kids in the northeast of Thailand. And these kids, many of whom had HIV, and many of them faced significant challenges. And she lived in quite a remote area, and part of that was to create the privacy and security of the kids. But one of the things running a charity I know is that if people can't see you, then it's hard for them to support you. So by being remote, by not being seen, by not being out there, not having the kids known to people, she wasn't able to raise enough money to support the kids. And
mm,
many of the kids couldn't access the public healthcare system. And for them to be treated for their many illnesses, it meant they had to go through the private healthcare system, which was expensive. And over a period of some 24 years, Mayfield would lose children through HIV and related illnesses and die. And
mm,
over that period of time, she would tell me that she buried 1,027 children. And so when we talk about resilience, I say, how do you, and there's a lot of people who talk about resilience who, with respect, I think have no idea, about challenge when I compare it to Mayfield. And it's not a bad week or a bad month.
mm,
Mayfield lived this 24 years. And, it's something, it's a big question to ask is how do you continue to wake up, and how do you continue to do what you do each day when the children in your care continue to die? And
mm,
HIV it's not a medical problem; it's one of poverty. And
mm,
she was faced with the decision of who would she give the limited medicine to? Because she didn't have enough to give to all, and she had to decide who would receive the medicine. And the problem with HIV as a virus is that if you go on and off the drug, it builds a resistance. So it gets stronger. So then you need more medicine to overcome and combat the virus. And she would lose children.
Mm,
It was part of writing the book this year. Like, I've known her and worked with her for 13 years. And part of the joy of writing the book this year was it gave me reason and time to really sit and pause and think about her on a
mm,
level that, because of our busy lives, I probably hadn't done enough of before. And I thought about that, and I thought, how do you continue to do what she was doing? It's not
mm,
just a tough month or 6 months or year or two. This went for 24 years, but she
mm,
continued. And from a resilience point of view, like in the book, I put down a number of reasons how I think she was able to continue. And I think the biggest was that she didn't let yesterday define her tomorrow. And because if she woke up with the burden of yesterday, how could she possibly move forward? And the nice end to that story was when I met her in 2010, and we decided that we could work together. The charity that I support, or the charity that I run, decided that we would support her and her children, and we would assume all responsibility for her running costs and the medical costs. And something remarkable happened by 2012, and that was the kids stopped dying. And it was
mm,
just a simple case of providing her with the needs that she had. And so when I talk about resilience, and when I reflect on people who have lived a resilient life, few stack up to what Mayfield has faced, and few stack up. For as long as I've known her, she's battled cancer herself, and I've seen her in highs and lows. I've seen her desperately ill, and there's many times where I've said goodbye, not thinking I'll see her again. But yet she finds it within herself to continue for the children. And in the book, I look at what are the things that I believe have allowed her to continue. And I think we'll go through our personal challenges, privately, business related. They might be related to family or relationships, and I think some of the lessons that I reflect on from her, I think equip us well to deal with our own challenges. And so she's a remarkable woman, and as I say, it was a real pleasure to take that time and reflect upon her.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that story. It puts life into perspective, doesn't it? Like you say, you think you're having a bad day or a bad week, and you're like, well,
Yeah,
perhaps.
and I don't think it's one of the things that I've been exposed to, loss on a pretty significant level,
Yeah.
and families who have lost. I met this remarkable woman who lost her three children, and over a period of months, I returned each one of them to her, and it's a kind of loss that most people thankfully will never face. And I
Mm,
don't think it takes away then from our own challenges. And I think it's always needs to be taken with caution when we say there's perspective, because I think
mm,
our own loss is our own loss.
mm,
And just because it's not on the scale of losing multiple children, or it's not on the case of Mayfield, I don't know that it serves us well to say, well, someone's doing it worse. I think
mm.
it's about finding the mechanisms and what works for us, and acknowledging and embracing the challenges, because it's, if we dismiss them, well, we haven't solved anything at all.
No, yes, and I do agree with that. Um, I find hearing stories like May's incredibly inspiring. And It enables me to dig deeper when I am going through a challenge myself. If I am going through a challenge, because I'm going through a health challenge at the moment, I will seek out these kinds of stories because it does just
Mm,
inspire me and it motivates me to just dig deeper because
yeah.
I truly believe that we can dig deeper,
Mm, mm,
deeper than we ever thought that we could possibly. So if
yeah.
you choose to, I think.
Yeah, I think the thing for Mayfield was, as I said, not letting yesterday define her tomorrow, but also her
Love that.
hopes being greater than her fears.
Yes,
And I think it's so important that when we're facing challenges, is that, we can't change what's happened, but we can change what happens next. And
100%.
I think yesterday can become a burden for us, and that's my reflection on looking at Mayfield and what she's done, and those who I've worked with in those areas who have suffered and endured
Yeah.
so much.
Yes, absolutely. So, Peter, my gosh, I could speak to you for hours, I think. I would love to give you the floor to sort of wrap up our podcast in that what do you think is true leadership now, and what do you believe are the key attributes that leaders will need to move forward with into the future?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's a lot of change over current times. I think or the future. I think there's some pretty consistent things in what we're looking for in our leaders. It's honesty, it's integrity, it's presence, it's the courage to make decisions. It's the willingness to own the outcome of our decisions, right or wrong, and I think sometimes leadership can be overcomplicated, or like I think when we look to what we want from our leaders, it's about them demonstrating that they care and they understand. I think it's about them asking, "How can I help?" I
Mm,
think it's about them listening and consulting and enacting on that. And I don't know that it's too different to what leaders um, of past generations or future generations have embraced. I think it's we don't need to overcomplicate it. I think it's just that, as I say, that care and understanding and presence.
yeah, I love that. I love the word presence too. I think it's incredibly important. So, Peter, thank you so much for being part of Leading You today. And on the show notes, I have got all the details as to where you can get in touch with Peter, his charity, and get a copy of his book as well. So thank you again.
My pleasure. Good on you, Julie. Thank you.